Good day, Brother Grant.
Good day.
First and foremost, it's an honor and privilege to have you here with us. We're going to go through a few questions just to give us a brief view of the landscape of your life in Omega and
Sure.
in whole and how it has impacted you. I'm just going to go through a list of questions. You can take it wherever you wish. First question is, when was the first time you noticed Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated?
I had an uncle, Dr. Wayne Branch, 2 years older than me. And when I was a junior in high school, I watched his probate show when I was a junior, and he was a second semester freshman at West Virginia State College, Theta Psi chapter. And I never imagined me doing anything like that he was doing, particularly when they pulled the capes off their heads and he was bald. And this was the season of the afros. So yeah. But that was my introduction to Omega, really.
Yes, sir. With that being said, when were you initiated into our illustrious organization?
Interestingly enough, 2 years later, May 14, 1971, a day I'll never forget.
Beyond your uncle, who were the influential brothers when you first were initiated?
That's very easy. Gentleman who was our faculty advisor, he had just come to the Marshall University campus in Huntington, West Virginia. He saw me and sent for me and said that we are trying to start something new here at Marshall. And I'm an Omega, and I would like you to be part of that I'm trying to get started. I really, till that moment, had never given any thought, none, to Omega or any other Greek letter organization. I didn't know anything other than that probate show that I saw 2 years earlier. But I bought into him. His name was Marvin Billups, Colonel Marvin Billups. He had just separated from the Army and became an associate dean of students at the campus. And that man meant everything to me. Interestingly enough, he could say the same things that my dad had always said. It just sounded better. It sounded more insightful. It sounded more erudite. It sounded like he knew what he was talking about, same words, but Marvin Billups said it, so it must be solid. Yeah.
Understood. What initial impact did the organization have on you upon induction?
Well, it gave me the opportunity to have brothers for the first time. I grew up with 5 sisters, no brothers, Kingston, and I never really had an opportunity to have close relationship with, live in close proximity to similarly situated men. Again, I did not have brothers, and so this gave me something that I always wanted. I was an 18-year-old initiate. At the time, a former National Executive Secretary, which would be tantamount to the ED, the Executive Director now, when he saw the submission of my paperwork, he sent it back saying, this guy's not old enough, somebody's made a mistake. And they said, well, no, he's a bona fide, college student with the requisite number of hours, under his belt. So that's how I got in, that's how I became an Omega, and that's how I was able to embrace brothers for the first time in my life, and that was life-changing.
Understood. With that being said, what positions have you held within the organization?
Going back to the beginning?
Yes, sir.
All right. My first position was as a dean of pledgees. In my first semester in the chapter, the Nu Beta chapter at Marshall University, I was the dean of pledgees, responsible for bringing the next line over. Then I was bossless the next year. If you all don't tell anybody, the DR came to our campus and put 2 pieces of paper before us and said, because of the misconduct of this chapter, I've got 1 or 2 options. Door number 1, I can go ahead and suspend you because that's my inclination. Then he said, the second piece of paper says that you're on probation, but if you go on probation, there are these things that you must do. And whoever your bossless is, you must report to me your accomplishes for the month. It has to be on my desk the first day of the month. If it's on the 2nd, you're suspended. If it's on the 3rd, 4th, or 5th, you're suspended. It has to be on the first day of the month. And I had learned a term that tickled my ear when we were at the district meeting the previous spring, and that was caucus. You know, an undergraduate at the district meeting raised his hand and said, "Can we caucus?" And so I asked the DR, "Can we caucus?" You know, my chapter, and the brothers patting me on the back saying, "Way to go, Roy. You know, now this is how we can get around this one and this one and this one. We can just say that we did it. We don't have to." I listened to my brothers, you know, tell me how we were going to be deceptive to the district representative, Bill Hunter. I want to get his name in. And I said, okay, let him back in. And so when the DR and the faculty advisor came back in, I said, we're opting for door number 1, the suspension. And my brothers went crazy. So, what, we didn't say that? I said, look, I'm not going to deceive these men who have been good to us. Either we're going to do it the right way, and do it the Omega way. And that's what we did. And spring of the next year, the next district meeting, we were voted chapter of the year because we did it the Omega way under my leadership as bossless. I graduated in 1974. And in the fall of 1976, I became the bossless of the Xi Alpha chapter, a graduate chapter, before my 25th birthday. Now, it wasn't that I was that impressive. It was that the chapter was in turmoil. And we had just hosted a district meeting, and that was very divisive, you know, for our chapter. So I was the compromise candidate. I was the only guy in the room, one, crazy enough to take the responsibility of leading us forward. But I took it, and we succeeded. And that catapulted me to being elected first vice district representative when I was 27 years old in the 4th district. And I was elected and reelected twice. And I relocated from the 4th, 6 months from becoming the DR. I relocated from the 4th to Greensboro, North Carolina, affiliated myself with the Tau Omega chapter, and I was there for 3 years. But when I exited, I was vice bossless of Tau Omega and served the 6th district as the district marshal in 1985, which was the meeting that was hosted there in Greensboro. For business reasons, relocated again to Atlanta. And the last thing Atlanta needs is another Omega man. So politically, I knew I was dead and stayed dead until I became part of the Delta Mu Mu chapter in 2009. And 2010, I became the chaplain of the chapter. And I told them that I would only serve for 4 years, no more than that, because chaplain is indeed the best job in Omega, bar none. I absolutely know that. So I served from 10 until 14, and I became dead again. I was nobody until 2020, when the newly elected district representative of the 7th District, Reginald Harris, tapped me to serve as his district chaplain. It's an appointed position, not an elected position in the 7th. I told him that I would love to do it, but I got to ask my wife, if it's okay with her. And she said no. She said, you're too busy, you're stretched too thin, So I went back to him and said, no, I can't do it because, So a week later, he called back and said, well, let me talk to your wife. I went, no, I can't do that. I'm still, the man of the house. And so I went back to her, and she said, well, you've never listened to me before. I thought you would go ahead and do it. I was just venting, So I became district chaplain in the 7th. In April of 2020, COVID had just hit. 27 months later, I get a call from Ricky Lewis, and he asked, would I consider being grand chaplain, which is the office I hold now. And I told him the same thing. Well, I'm going to have to talk to my wife. And he said, well, certainly. Well, my wife likes seafood and she likes flowers. So I brought home flowers, took her out to dinner so that I could lay this on her. And interestingly enough, on that Thursday night, I said, well, I got to talk to you. And she said, okay, what's wrong? I said, well, I have an opportunity to serve as grand chaplain of Omega, thinking that I was going to have to talk her into it based on how she reacted 2 years before. And she said, oh, yeah, you can do that. So here I am in the position as grand chaplain of the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity, and I'm humbled and honored to so do.
Thank you again. Thank you for everything, sir.
Yeah.
With that being said, we want to cover our organization, and I would love to know, how has it changed since the day of your initiation to now, current?
I think the most significant change has been the influence of those of us who have come through PWIs and introduced that culture, or lack thereof, to the Omega community, really the D9 community. My thought process informs me that before the late 60s, early 70s, when most of Omega were at HBCUs, they were enclosed communities where the whole of the collegiate community knew who the D9 organizations were. They were closer to each other. They were more greatly supportive, faculty, administration, and community. I came along at a time where chapters that proliferated at PWIs, predominantly white institutions, began to take over in number, but lagged behind greatly in culture. And so I think the hiccups, that presented themselves for Omega, that I don't know that in these last 50 years we've been able to adequately resolve. You have Omega men on campus, but you have administrators going home, at 5 or 6 o'clock because they've got families, at home. And so, in the main, we've come through at least 2 generations of brothers who were not supervised in the same way as Omega men were at that age in the first 50 years of our fraternity. So from 11, the first 60 years, let's say from 1911 to 1971, which is when I came in. Omega made a turn, making more brothers at far more institutions. But that brought about a difference.
All right. With that being said, that gives us a springboard into the next question, which is simple. What does the future hold for Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated?
Oh, my goodness. I'm all in for Omega stock. You know, I'll buy as many shares as you have to sell. One, because we are bringing about the kind of leadership, both at administrative level, I'm talking IHQ, you know, they're employing the kinds of systems that are state of the art that make us the kind of organization that we want to be. Two, we have enough, not all, but we have enough serious men in leadership positions, and this is all the way from grand officers down through chapter level. I'm very proud of the leadership of my local chapter, DMM, and we don't have an officer in the chapter who's more than 45 years old. I think 2 of those officers are not yet 40. That tells me that the leadership development model that we've embraced means they can ascend to state level, then district level, then grand office level. And there's nothing unique about Delta Mu Mu. I believe this is happening all over Omega. If some of us who are gray in head will recognize that there's a role we can play as mentors to these young men, Omega will be in good hands. There's another way I can say it, if you'll permit. King, come here.
Sir.
The old man lifted his old gray head and said, "In this path I've come," he said, "there followeth after me today a youth whose feet must pass this way. Now this chasm that was naught to me, to that fair-haired youth might a pitfall be. He too must cross in the twilight dim. Good friend, I built this bridge for him." Thank you, my brother.
That being said, Brother Graham, you have answered my last question, your message to the Brotherhood, and I thank you for doing it so eloquently.
I thank you for having me.
Yes, sir.
God bless you.